Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we are speeding up Speedy Entry again. We're also pulverizing percussion once again, and today we're talking specifically about percussion in Speedy Entry. Now, when I talk about percussion, I'm really talking about non-pitched percussion. Regular pitched percussion, like this xylophone part here, will behave exactly like any other pitched instrument in Finale. So there's nothing really extra to say about these particular instruments in Speedy Entry. The only thing I might say is that when you use pitched percussion in Finale, just be aware of the transposition. In this case, the xylophone is set to an octave lower, which will affect where you enter the notes on the MIDI keyboard if you're using a MIDI keyboard. Other than that, it works exactly the same. So really what we're dealing with is non-pitched percussion, and I've got a triangle and a drum set here set up to illustrate this. Now basically Speedy Entry works pretty much the same way for percussion with a few differences. So the first thing is that if you go into the Speedy Entry frame, you'll notice that you'll get something extra here. You'll get the name of the instrument, and the name of the instrument will depend on where your cursor is. So as you move up and down, you will see different instruments there. Floor tom 2, kick drum, bass drum, hi-hat foot, splash, etc. And then it will skip back to the top, china cymbal, and so on and so forth. And every instrument that exists in the percussion layout for this staff will appear in this little spot here in the Speedy Entry frame. Entering notes is really pretty similar to entering notes in any other staff in Finale, particularly with a MIDI instrument, with a MIDI keyboard. The only trick is that you kind of have to know what notes on the keyboard go with what sounds for the percussion. So if you're familiar with the standard percussion layout, you'll know that the C 2 octaves below middle C on a keyboard is going to give you the bass drum. So if I play that low C and hit 5, I'll get my bass drum. If I play the D right above that, we know that that's the snare drum. The F sharp above that is going to be the hi-hat, and so on and so forth. So if you're familiar with that standard MIDI percussion layout, you're good to go. There's probably a million resources online to find exactly how that is laid out if you're interested, or if you really want to directly in Finale, there's sort of a way to do this. You can go into the score manager, select the drum set, go to notation style over here, press settings to get to the percussion layout, and then edit that drum set layout just so you can see where the MIDI notes are. And then you'll get this list on the left-hand side of every instrument that's available in this percussion layout. And in the right column, you'll get the MIDI notes. So the splash cymbal is 55, the crash is 49, crash 2 is 57, etc. The only thing to know is that middle C is 60. So to figure out where the splash cymbal is, you just kind of have to do a little bit of counting backwards, and 55 would end up being the G right below middle C for this splash cymbal. So if you kind of forget where something is or need a reminder, this is one way to do it. And other than that, you could also just, as you're entering the notes, if you can hear it, you can just kind of play the instruments until you find the one you're looking for. And then one more final way to do this is actually if you have all of the notes in your score already, which I've kind of done here with a drum set. This is every single sound that exists in the percussion layout for this drum set, as well as the 2 sounds that exist for the triangle here. In the view menu, there's this show submenu, and there's this option called percussion MIDI values. So what you're doing is temporarily showing the percussion MIDI values for all of these notes. So then you can go over here and figure out that, okay, that's my kick drum right there. So that's percussion MIDI note 36. Of course, you'll have to do some more counting to figure out that the 36 is the C 2 octaves below middle C, but that's another way to find out what those MIDI note values are. Incidentally, these numbers will never print when you have that showing. They are annoying, so I tend to leave that unchecked, but that can help you out as well. But other than that, entering notes with a MIDI keyboard is fairly simple. You just have to know the MIDI map. Entering notes in Speedy Entry without a MIDI device is a little bit trickier. Now in this case, you'll still get the instruments listed here in the Speedy Entry frame, and we can always, of course, just use the up and down arrows to get to the instrument we want, and then press the rhythm, and then that will give us the note. This works exactly the same as doing this in any other staff. The major difference is that with this method, we don't have available to us this table right here of pitches for entry without MIDI with the caps lock down. In fact, if I press the caps lock button and try to use any of these letters, it's really just going to kind of scroll me up and down through the pitches here, and not really in a useful way. So you're basically doing the same thing by using the up and down arrows. So unfortunately, the caps lock method is not all that useful for percussion in Speedy Entry. Where it can be kind of useful, however, is in single line instruments. So for example, this triangle part where you only have basically two instruments. You have the open triangle and the mute triangle. Once you get your cursor to where you want it to be, the open triangle, then using the Speedy Entry without the MIDI device is actually pretty easy, and actually might even be easier than with a MIDI keyboard, because from here all I have to do is just start pressing rhythms 5 4 4 5 to get these triangle rhythms in here, and it's really quite simple to do this. If you need the mute triangle in this instance, just press the down arrow to get that mute triangle, and then the down or the up arrow because it's just cycling to get to the open, and you're good to go. When you do this, just try and remember that Option Shift plus the rhythm will give you the rest, so you can very easily create parts like this on a single line instrument, just using the Option Shift with the rhythm, and then the numbers themselves to get the notes. So again, single line instruments, it's a little bit more useful without a MIDI device. It's definitely difficult on like a drum set where you have multiple or a lot of different instruments in the layout. So a couple different things going on there, but hopefully that makes sense. Now, once you have notes in the staff, all of the other modifier keys work pretty much exactly the same way. In fact, if you were to hover over anything and press L, you'll get the stem to flip. H or O will hide. The semicolon will turn it into a grace note, etc. I mean, all of those other things, beaming, everything that you can think of to modify notes in Speedy Entry, they'll work exactly the same in percussion. There's no difference there. The only real difference here is when you're doing things that have to do with accidentals. Obviously, accidentals have no meaning in an unpitched percussion part. So the F and S keys, which would normally flat or sharp a note in Speedy Entry, will work a little bit differently. And they'll really only work on quote-unquote pitches that exist on a line or space where multiple instruments occupy that space. So in the case of this snare drum, on the C line here, I have the snare drum, I have the snare cross stick, the snare rim shot, and the snare ghost stroke. They all exist on this one space. So in order to cycle between them, if you enter that C there, you can press the F and it will cycle between all of those notes, or the S, and it will also cycle between all of those notes. So instead of flattening or sharpening the note, it's basically cycling the available notes on that space. We can do the same thing with the plus and minus keys from the number pad, but in this case, the cursor has to be hovering over the correct line or space. Once you do that, you can do the same thing. Plus will just cycle through, as will minus. Will not work if you're not hovering over it, though. So again, just that's what's going on. Yeah, other than that, it kind of works the same way. You can always go up to another line or space here and press the Enter key to add an extra note to that rhythmic position there. So again, it just kind of works pretty much the same way. The other thing I can do, I should have mentioned, is that if I can grab and drag these, and this will cycle through all of the available instruments as well. So if you enter a wrong one, you can always do it this way with the mouse just by click and dragging it. So lots of different options going on there. All right, so yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like I said, Speedy Entry in percussion works very similarly to Speedy Entry in any other thing. There's just a few little tiny things to know about, which I think will help you out when you're putting in percussion in Speedy Entry. All right, so that's it for today. If you're following along in the Speeding Up Speedy Entry category, the next thing we're going to look at is Speedy Entry and Guitar tab. If you're following along in the Pulverizing Percussion category, we're going to look at percussion in the Hyperscribe tool next. So I'll look forward to seeing you on either of those videos, and I guess that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon on the next video.